What's up, guys? So in the last couple of days, a couple of major news events related to WoW have happened, and I just want to go over and talk about what they might mean for the future of the game. Especially this first one, and that's the announcement that Tom Chilton, the former game director, is now the former game director. He's been the game director since Cataclysm, and he's been replaced by Ian Hazzikostas, aka Watcher. Tom has been with the WoW team since 2004, and he became the overall team lead in Wrath of the Lich King, and so this change in leadership is pretty substantial. I mean, we haven't seen this since Wrath of the Lich King, when Jeffrey Kaplan, who was one of the initial leads, moved off to Titan, which of course became Overwatch. It is worth noting that Tom Chilton isn't leaving Blizzard, unlike a lot of other people who have left the WoW team, like Ghostcrawler, or Zelnath, or Chris Metzen, or Bashiok, or Zarim, or a whole host of other people. He's not actually leaving Blizzard entirely. He's just moving over to some unannounced project, which is actually, I think, the most interesting part of this piece of information, because that leads to a lot of speculation about what project Blizzard could be working on. You know, is it Warcraft 4? Maybe another MMO, or like a single-player RPG set in the Diablo universe, or maybe even a Warcraft RPG? It's fun to speculate, but right now we pretty much have zero information to go on. And considering it took about 5 years from when Jeff Kaplan moved over to Titan until Overwatch was announced, we're probably not going to know anything for quite a while. Now, as I mentioned, Tom Chilton leaving puts Ian Hazzikostas in charge as the new game director. Now, Ian's been with Blizzard for quite some time as well, about 8 years. I think he initially started working at Blizzard as one of the encounter designers on Ulduar. And before he was working at Blizzard, he was most well known as the guild leader of Elitist Jerks, a guild that's mainly known for their forums, which became kind of a bastion of theory crafting and class discussion during the Burning Crusade era. Ian's done a lot of interviews and has become pretty prominent on the overall team since Mists of Pandaria. He's often served as the face of the dev team, especially after Ghostcrawler left. So I've been thinking that this transition could happen for a while. I mean, given the amount of turnover we've seen from longtime Blizzard employees, it just seemed like something that could happen. And Ian was always the obvious choice. I mean, he's changed titles and moved up the ranks quite a few times in recent years. Initially, he was an encounter designer, then the lead encounter designer, then the lead game content designer, then assistant game director, and now, finally, game director. The big question, of course, is what does this mean for the players? I think, like most of the other developer changes we've seen in recent years, the answer is probably not very much. It is a change in leadership, so it might be more noticeable than like a community manager leaving who, they don't really have a direct impact on the design. But, I mean, Ian himself has already been pretty influential in the design process over the last few years. It's not like Blizzard went out and hired some designer from another game company like BioWare or Valve or somewhere else really reputable. Ian's been a major part of the WoW team for a long time. He's not like an outsider coming to take over the team. And personally, I've always really liked Ian, whenever he would answer questions at BlizzCon or in the more recent Q&As. I think he's clearly a hardcore raider, but he doesn't embrace the raid or die design philosophy that was really quite prevalent during late Mists of Pandaria and all of Warlords. And my guess is that this change in leadership has been planned for quite a while. I mean, every interview that I've seen over the course of Legion development, usually they involved Ian, and the implication I got was that Ian was sort of the lead developer for Legion. He was guiding the process more than Tom Chilton was. In any case, I don't think it's anything to get worked up about. I mean, even if you don't like Ian, you probably shouldn't worry about anything changing drastically. The other major news that I wanted to talk about is patch 7.1, which has finally got a release date. It's coming out on October 25th. So that's pretty great, I think. I mean, it's coming so quickly after Legion's release. It reminds me a lot of how 5.1 was released just 2 months after Mists of Pandaria, and I would say that patch 5.1 offered a lot less content than 7.1. I mean, this is the first time we're getting a patch dungeon in like 5 years since 4.3, which frankly is kind of ridiculous that we haven't got anything in so long. but the new Karazhan looks to be shaping up to be a great dungeon, lots of bosses. Some people might call it a rehash, but certainly nothing like, say, Zul'Gurub or Zul-Aman. It's more along the lines of Dead Mines or Shadowfang Keep, where they revamped it quite a bit, and I would say they revamped it a lot more because you have, new areas and a lot of stuff has changed. It's more revisiting the location, but there's a lot of new assets involved. We're also getting a raid, which is really surprising. We haven't got, a nice small 3-boss raid or so in an incredibly long time, and we certainly haven't got anything like that in a patch in pretty much forever. While I do love the big giant raids like Hellfire Citadel or Siege of Orgrimmar or ICC, a nice short raid that you can clear with your guild in a night of progress, not having to beat your head against the wall for multiple nights trying to clear all 12, 13 bosses, I think that's a nice welcome addition. But the patch isn't just, new dungeon content and raid content. Tons of new world quests are being added, which is great. They're keeping the system fresh, similar to adding more dailies in previous patches, although there aren't any new reputations, which could be a little disappointing for some people. I think the coolest way they're expanding this system is the new world event area on Alkaz Isle. And this is interesting because we're finally seeing them utilize the old world with the new scaling tech. They've done some things like that in the past, like Battlefield Barons, but those didn't really scale. They were one-off things that didn't last very long. I think the real first example we've seen of this is the invasions. And I think the invasions were pretty awesome. I would have liked to see a little bit more depth there. I mean, it sort of just came down to killing mobs, but I think that as time goes on, we'll see them really expand the use of this scaling tech to the older zones. Sort of like time walking, but for the outdoor world. And I think that's really exciting. I'd really like World Quest to take place in the whole world, not just the Broken Isles. Overall, I think Legion has been shaping up to be a great expansion so far. If they can keep releasing patches at this cadence, and they don't have like a huge content drought at the end again, which is asking quite a bit. I mean, they always say it's not going to happen, but it always does. Then, if they can avoid that, this could be the best expansion. I'm really glad to see that WoW has recovered after the terrible disaster that was Warlords of Draenor. It's really hard to overstate how bad that expansion was for the game. But Legion has overall made up for all the shortcomings of Warlords, so I'm really looking forward to what they show off at BlizzCon. Hopefully they'll show off more of their future patch plans, just to give us some more confidence that they really are able to keep putting out content at a steady clip, and they're not going to leave us hanging for a year again. Anyway, that brings us to the end of the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.